thanks everyone for joining us today. My name is Matthew Woolf. I'm thrilled to introduce our guests today who are joining us for today's roundtable. Before I introduce them though, I'd like to, before we get started on the conversation, I want to lead us through a moment of silence to honor all the 2,511,767 reported worldwide COVID deaths as of today. And we'd also like to honor all of our Black and Brown brothers and sisters, as well as our First Nation brothers and sisters, whose lives have been taken by the hands of police brutality and other senseless acts of violence. So if you just join me in a moment of silence, that'd be great. Okay, thank you everyone. We've been holding these moments of silence since our first roundtable, and we feel that it's important to hold this awareness as we find ourselves back on set and back at work. We're still in the midst of a pandemic, and as we return to work, we must do so with this awareness of safety and empathy towards one another. So now I'd like to introduce our guest today, and joining us, I'll go in the order of what I can see in this box. Top left, I don't know how you guys see it. Joining us from LA, we've got Eric Branco, DP Eric Branco. Thanks very much for joining us. Eric, his recent credits, film credits, 40-year-old version, which is we'll talk about during the discussion, is in the running, the Oscars this year, and was voted, I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Sundance Film Festival Audience Award this year, last year. And,
on the directing award.
What's that?
Directing award, best director.
There you go. So I know I'd get something wrong. And then previously, the year before that, he had another film that was won an award at Sundance, and that was Clemency, right?
Yep. Yeah, Clemency won the Grand Jury the year before.
There you go, got that one right. And you recently had your first foray into the TV world, which I'm not sure the name of the show, but I've been looking forward to discussing that. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Next, we've got Rodney Taylor, another DP, very esteemed DP. Rodney is recent credits, he's been in the business for a long time, but his recent credits that he probably known for are, as he just mentioned, Swagger, the TV show that he's been on. How many seasons now, Rodney?
It's only one season, but I've been in Richmond since October of 2019 to try to complete this.
Okay, so
yeah.
you're in Richmond, Virginia. So
yeah.
Joining us from the longest TV show in history.
Yes, that's right. No, yeah. What was the longest show? Avatar? No, it was Swagger.
Well, we look forward to hearing about that shortly. So thanks for joining us, Rodney.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for accepting my check to have to put me with two really cool dudes.
That's all right. I'm looking forward to the Film Roundtable. Looking forward to running our business off that check and funding future film foundations of people the next 5 years of your career. Thank you, Rodney.
Yeah.
And finally, but not least, we have another esteemed DP, Tommy Maddox Upshaw, joining us from Los Angeles. And Tommy's recent TV credits were Empire, Snowfall, and Huge in France, to name a few. And he's currently prepping to travel for another big TV show, which we're looking forward to hearing about, if we can discuss that. And we're very excited to have all three of you on here. So Tommy, thanks for joining in.
Well, appreciate it.
So I want to get started just to talk about the lives of DPs. First of all, we're going to talk about the transition, maybe from indie film to working in TV, and what that's like, and also just the relationship that it has, working in the business has on our personal lives, and we'll go from there. But I know some of you, you kind of already know each other. Rodney and Tommy, you guys know each other, and Eric and Tommy, you guys know each other. And I think, you know, we're keen to
Because Tommy knows everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything runs through Tommy.
Yeah.
Like,
Let's hear about
I like
that.
to meet good people. I like to meet good people, man. It's like, you know.
Tommy, let's start with you then. Eric gave you the intro.
Oh man.
Why don't you tell us how you got into the biz and you know, and where how you arrived where you're at now?
Oh, I have a weird kind of fun journey. I started off, I'm originally from Boston, Massachusetts, but I started working a production in New York in the 90s as a production assistant on like Hype William music videos. So it was like all those hip hop videos, like from DMX to Tribe, R. Kelly. I mean, I was a PA watching people like Malik Saeed do his thing, Danny Pearl doing his thing, Vance Burberry. And I was like gripping for these guys. And, you know, the guy that Rodney's shooting with, Cliff Charles, was a gaffer at the time, and Best Boy, and Cliff hiring me as an electric, PA electric. And brothers like Donovan Lambert, who these guys took me on as like their PA trainee, trained me in the 90s while I was still an undergraduate, and I would travel from Massachusetts to Boston just to PA on these videos during my summer and winter breaks. After graduating from the College of the Holy Cross, I worked in the business in Massachusetts for a while, still in New York, got in the union. I was working with Rodney. I don't know if you know this, but I was working with Eric Messersmith.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, Eric Messersmith and I were like, I was like maybe 21, he was 20. And we knew each other in Massachusetts because we were the two youngest guys in the local IATSE union, 41. So we were like the two young bucks who were getting out of undergrad, and like we worked with each other, and we were just young kids. And you know, now then I went to AFI a couple years after graduating undergrad, and been out in LA for 19 years now. And along that path, Cliff Charles kept hiring me from, you know, being an electric form. After I got out of AFI, he hired me to start gaffing for him on like Spike Lee jobs.
Oh, cool.
And then Spike helped me transition to camera operating and linked me up with my mentor, Maddie Libatique. And between Spike and Maddie and people like Cliff Charles, who's a phenomenal DP, it's like my career is like went from operator to DP. Then, as we talked about, Matt, the strike happened, and then it was like the weird journey, like coming back to DPing again after the 2007-2008 writer's strike. I mean, it's and you know, I've been DPing pretty steadily for a good, you know, 10 to I guess 15 years. But you know, one thing we'll talk about is 2 or 3 years after AFI, I had my first studio movie, this small sequel of a movie for Sony. 3 can play that game, but then the writer's strike happened, and then it was like, boop. It was like, oh my God. Like I went from being like, oh my God, I got a shot. I'm starting to DP like studio work pretty young to like,
oh man.
What the hell? And luckily I was single, I wasn't married or anything, so I could kind of figure it out. But it was kind of like, oh my God, like how did I all of a sudden lose 50 paces when I was like, you know, because I had done an indie movie in between my first and second year of AFI that got into a little bit of festival runs, but then I had done enough that coming out of AFI after a couple of years, I got a break. And then the break was just cold busted by 2 strikes. What was it, Rodney? It was like what? It was the writers and actors back to back, right?
Yeah.
Like
It was
into
brutal.
2007, 2008, and that went on for like almost 2 years, 3. It's like
brutal. Yeah.
Brutal.
That's right. I remember that. Funny enough, I was at that time. I was working. I'd been in the States for about 4 years at that point, coming from the UK, coming from a commercials background, and I got into reality television. And 2007, 2008 was kind of like the heyday of reality TV, and I was working nonstop. I couldn't, didn't know what to do with all the work. I was traveling all over the world.
Wow.
But
we didn't think about that, Tommy.
I ended up doing reality TV after I did an indie movie, studio movie as a DP. had began these commercials, and all of a sudden, I found myself doing reality TV. And at the time, all I could fester up to stick around was doing stuff for AFI because I went there. And me and Rachel Morrison were the two alums responsible connecting people like alumni. And we were both doing reality TV at the time.
Well,
Me sit there and be like, what's going to happen? Like now, you know, see where Rachel is, but like I remember sitting with her at multiple coffee shops talking about how do we go from like AFI to freaking shooting reality TV.
Right.
You know what I mean? That was gnarly, man. That strike, and I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
You know, Tommy, funnily enough, one reality show that I did was a New York spin-off of a reality show in LA called The Hills. And I did the city, and Rachel was the DP of the Hills. And she flew out to New York to hand it off to me. And I didn't know, I wasn't expecting that. I didn't know who she was at the time. So we met for one day back in whenever it was, 2008, I think, or 2009, until I didn't see her again until I bumped into her at a cinematographers dinner hosted by Ari in LA, probably like 4 years ago. It was,
yeah.
And yeah, she's come a long way. Well, very cool, Tommy, very cool. Rodney, what about you, man? What's your journey?
Wow, man, it's long, but you know what I will say to the younger cinematographers who are listening, you know, they always say to you when they talk to you, you know, like, what's the roadmap? And you're like, there is not one. And all three of us will have different stories here, and every DP has a different story of how to get there, you know, and it's all about just persistence and passion. And you know, I came from an incredibly small fishing village called Sea Level, North Carolina. That's like a road to a fish house. And if I can somehow make my way into this, anybody can do it. You know, you just have to have that passion. But I went to school in Chapel Hill. I went to Carolina, but it really wasn't much of a film program. But what they had at the time was ESPN was just launching, really. And so live sports, there was a huge network of live sports cameramen out of Chapel Hill because of ACC basketball and the history of that. So I joined that and started shooting live sports for about 6 years out of Chapel Hill. And then I moved to Los Angeles to pursue film. I didn't know anybody really, and started at Roger Corman's as an assistant. I had met Levy Isaacs at the workshops in Maine, and he gave me a shot to be his assistant on this show called Saturday the 14th Strikes Back at Roger Corman's. And Giannis Clemency was the gaffer. Mauro Fiore was the key grip. You know, we were just living and breathing film, and it was pretty exciting. You know, I couldn't believe I was working on a movie. And, you know, I just worked my way up from there, and started working on. I also took a little bit of a turn and went into IMAX films, which I loved. I assisted on probably a dozen IMAX films all over the world, and then I started shooting IMAX films, another dozen of those. And in the meantime, I was trying to do indie films between those projects. So I did indie films. I started shooting those, and but unfortunately, no one saw any of those films ever. So it was really difficult to get. You know, it's all about people seeing your films. You know, I'm interested to hear Eric's experience because he's had, you know, people have seen those films, you know, but the films I saw, they would go win these festivals, but no one would ever see them, you know, and the box office would be like $100 grand. You're like, oh man. So that's when I started the television journey. And I don't know if you want to get into that now or not, but, or maybe we want to hear about Eric's journey first. But that's the continuation will be, you know, getting into television for me.
Awesome. Yeah, well, yeah. Let's jump over to Eric, and then we'll come back to that. Thanks, Rodney.
Yeah, I grew up in New York City. I grew up in the Bronx. So you know, I think I was lucky. You know, I grew up without much money, but I think I was lucky in that I lived somewhere where there was an art community, and even though I didn't know anybody that was making art for a living, I knew that people were, and it was possible somehow. so that I think that gave me, I guess, maybe the confidence to kind of go for it. I think, I didn't know that I wanted to be a cinematographer until I got to college. But I knew I wanted to be involved in storytelling somehow. So as a kid, I used to act in like very, very small, like off Broadway productions. And I thought the people who I looked up to at the time, the kind of New York filmmakers like Spike Lee and at the time Woody Allen, they all wrote and directed and acted in their own pieces. And I thought that's just what you did. So I started acting, decided to go to film school for directing, and was just making short films with my buddies. Worked a summer job as a lifeguard, and made enough money to buy a little digital camera, little like Sony Handycam. Started making shorts with my friends. Applied to film school, got into the School of Visual Arts in New York. I couldn't really afford to like travel or go anywhere for school, so I just commuted down to the school, SVA in New York. Got there, and kind of really, while there, really fell in love with filmmaking and telling a story visually, using a camera. And I think I was one of the few people there that really had a passion for it. And so, I started shooting other people's, student films, first year films, second year films. And I ended up, I found the environment pretty creatively stifling. So I ended up dropping out. And I just started picking up work, doing indie G&E in New York City. Got linked in with a couple good kind of crews. I'm sure you guys can attest to this, but I feel like G&E crews are kind of like pirate ships. You know what I mean? Like everybody kind of like there are like different kind of like crews that all work together. So I got kind of brought into a couple of those. Started working a ton. The whole time I was still shooting stuff on the weekends, stuff with friends. I'd meet people on set. We'd be working this thing for money, and but we'd get along and say, hey, let's do a short over the weekend. Matt, I'm pretty sure I made you sit through a couple of those terrible short films back in the day.
They weren't terrible.
But eventually, I mean, there was no real like kind of like sea change. Eventually, it was just this kind of thing where I was at the time I was gaffing, and I eventually just made enough money DPing that I could start to kind of tip the scales and stop taking G&E work. And funny enough, Rodney, ESPN was also, I got this very random job doing ESPN's like first web series, revolving around Monday Night Football. So, which at the time was like the most money I had ever made on anything. And like, they would put us on a plane and I didn't have to pay for the ticket. But I did a season of Monday Night Football where we would go to the city, do like, film, Friday, Saturday, do a tailgating video that they would have online for halftime. So I did a season of that, and that was kind of like the clean break from working Grip Electric. Once I'd kind of been out of that world for, 6-7 months, I got back to the city, and, all those kind of G&E connects had moved on to other people. And I was like, well, here goes. And from then, kind of from that point, really was only a DP.
Cool.
Very cool. It's interesting. Like a lot of people always ask, well, most people always ask, like young people, how do you get your start? And like you said, Rodney, there are so many different stories and so many different ways. There's not one way. And clearly, just by listening to all three of your stories, it's obvious. I mean, I remember when I was coming up in England as a camera assistant, and I would talk to lots of first ACs or focus pullers, as we call them in England, and operators who were frustrated because they wanted to be DPs and they got caught in the financial trap. And they had families and bills to pay for and houses to pay for, and they're like, it's never going to happen for me anymore. And I remember thinking to myself, that's not going to happen to me. I'm going to jump right now. And I jumped, expecting everyone to that knew me as a clapper loader to give me jobs as a DP, and of course it didn't happen. So you had to go out and work your way up. you know, and so there's multiple ways of like cracking into the business. Rodney, but specifically now, you know, TV. I want to talk a little bit about television, and you could say maybe this is a golden age for TV.
Definitely.
I mean, if you consider, you know, just looking at the caliber of actors that work on TV shows, and how those, you would never have seen those kind of caliber of actors. You know, they would stay strictly in the cinema world and the theater world, movie world, and now I feel like the onus is a little bit pushed more towards TV than it is movies. And you know, you're seeing the quality of work is so great, not just from the acting standpoint, the writing standpoint, and the filmmaking and shooting standpoint from, you know, people like you guys. And I'm keen to hear what you know from all of you, you know, because you've obviously all of you transitioned from movies to TV. Just what your experiences are, and how, you know, what you have to say on that topic, really. Rodney, yeah, let's just kind of tie back in with you in terms of how you made that entry into TV.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. I mean, I have to say, you know, I you know, a lot of us come to Los Angeles with the idea of doing movies, and you know, I was on that journey, and I really love films, and I love the indie films I was shooting, but it really started getting to a point where it was almost becoming a hobby. I couldn't make any money. I mean, the rates kept going down, actually, and I think the last offer that I turned down was $1,000 a week. And I'm going, wait a minute, I got to pay a sitter $1,000 a week for my kids. I'm not a financial whiz, but that's not working out. You know, I mean, like this. And I just started watching what was happening on television, and I was like, hold on a minute, these are the scripts that I'm interested in. These are the things that used to be movies. Now they're on television. The drama's on television. You know, the really that really great balance of drama with comedies on television, you know, and I need to get into this, and you know, the rate's definitely better because it's protected by the union. So so I talked with my agent, you know, Dan Burnside, and we made a very clear plan. So for me, this wasn't like a backup plan. This is something I really love doing, and I made the transition. But the transition was not easy. I mean, I had to. I basically sat down and I said, okay, I'm gonna figure out. I'm gonna choose 5 cinematographers who are veteran television cinematographers, and I'm gonna choose 5 guys who have made it from indie film to television. And I'm gonna write email. I knew them. It's not like they were just out of the blue. They were people I didn't know. And I sat down and wrote an email saying, you know, and at the time, by the way, as you know, getting these offers for $1,000 a week, you know, I was starting to operate again. I'd actually skipped that step. I was an assistant, then I started shooting in the indie film and these IMAX films, and I had to start operating again. And you know, it was pretty humbling to be an ASC member operating a camera for people. But luckily, I had some really good friends that took me through that period, and it was only with friends, and it was great. And I learned a lot actually by doing it. And so I wrote these 10 DPs, and I said I will operate for you on television. I will splinter unit for you on television. I'll shoot second unit for you on television. I really want to get in. And I got great responses back from everybody about, you know, what to do, how to do it. But Jim Deneau called me and said, he was one of the DPs, a friend of mine. And he said, hey, I'm doing this show for HBO called Getting On. And I'm going to operate a camera, and I need a second camera operator that's a DP to work, because we're going to be flying. There's 3-day episodes, and it's documentary style. And I want somebody that knows, you know, lighting, and you can just operate the camera, and you'll be doing it on your own pretty much. And he said, you know, and most likely if season 2 happens, I won't even be around. So maybe we can get you the job, you know, and you can start shooting television. And that's what happened. He did the first season. I got along great with everybody. And when season 2 came up, I got the job to shoot it. And I can't thank Jim enough. I thank him constantly. But that's where it started. And then I started you get that one show and then you start working towards getting more television series. And for me, it's been an incredible experience. I mean, I have worked with some fantastic directors. I mean, I would have never gotten to do a movie with Jonathan Demme as a director, but I did a TV series with him. I did a TV series with Lee Daniels. I mean, like, these are guys that probably would not call me for a feature, but I got to work with them as directors, and the experience has been great. And then, on an indie film, you guys know, it's like you have your crew, if you're lucky, is a grip electric department of 4 and 4, and you're operating the camera with a couple of assistants, and you're going at it, And now I'm on this show Swagger, and I've got like 50 people in my department. It's mind blowing, and you can do anything. If a director says, "Can we do this?" Yeah, we can do it. You can do anything, and it's really been great. I love it. So that's my experience with television.
Awesome. Tommy, let's go back to you for a second. How did you foray into TV? I mean, coming out, being shadowed, or rather having Maddie Libatique as a mentor, and obviously him going down the movie path that he has. What led you into the TV world, and what's your experience?
Kind of ties into that down period. Like, I was operating for Maddie, and then I was doing the reality TV thing. And it's funny because my first show, straight narrative, was Real Husbands of Hollywood with Kevin Hart. The very last season of that, where it's like, it's a totally scripted show, but they want it as like a faux reality TV, right? So just because I had done that freaking reality R&B Divas LA and some other shows, and like R&B Divas was cool because I love the crew. Like the people on that, some of them still work with me on my narrative side.
That's great.
And one of my operators is now a DP. Like, this woman, Vanessa Smith, who's the DP of Mayans this season, was like my operator from R&B Divas, and and then I brought her on to Real Husbands, and then I brought her on to some other stuff. And then like Jose, one of my ACs, is I think but we have Freddie with this. But it's like, because I did that, and I got put up by this producer named Carl Craig, who was the producer of Real Husbands, and like Stan Lathan and Ralph Farquhar, who are two Black men that have been in television like longer than possibly anybody, Black or white. Stan Lathan is the longest running director in the DGA for anything.
Wow.
Like, Stan did Sanford and Son when he was like in his 20s.
Wow.
So the three of them brought me into like the narrative TV space through BET. And I did Real Husbands, and then Stan brought me on another show with him that he was producing. And like, those guys really kind of grew me, but it was like my approach of that reality space kind of worked into transitioning to doing that show just off of the universe. And it was like, okay. So it's like the things I learned from Maddie, but then at the foot speed of the, some bad, some great reality TV experiences helped transition me into this space. But then I would still do movies with Maddie, and Maddie would bring me on to do second unit on stuff. And then I would get an indie movie. So I was straddling the space for years, the TV, and I just have kept kind of like doing this dance. And, it's kind of worked out. I mean, I've done indie movies in like South Africa and a couple other spots while still doing the TV thing. And it's like, how do I do it if I make X amount, financially doing the TV? Then it gives me a little bit of leeway. But now the stories have gotten so much better. But the writing was on the wall, though, to Rodney's point, with Netflix. Once Netflix went from like, I used to get all those DVDs in the mail. Then word came out that they were going to start making their own stuff. And then, being in the business and hearing stuff, you're like, wait a second. Then you see them put a building up 2 blocks away from where I was living at the time when I was single. In Hollywood, they put up, Netflix on the corner building on Sunset and the 101. You're like, oh, something's up.
Yeah,
and you're like,
for sure.
Here goes the pad. Then all Hulu comes up, and then Disney acquires Hulu. You're like, the writing's on the wall. And all these filmmakers are getting deals on these online streaming platforms. You're like, oh.
Big time, yeah.
it's we all got to be ready for the shift. And like, trust me, I have these discussions with Maddie, and he's definitely like, he's like, oh, the TV space versus the film space, and like how to surf it. And I definitely want to still do movies. I'm still, I'm interviewing to do movies still. But these stories, I mean, like, you watch Snowfall, and I mean, Snowfall's different TV from Empire. Like, I stood in for something at Empire, and it was cool, but you watch Snowfall, it's a big ass feature. Like, put it against anything that you watch in feature space, and it's like, look at the depth of the writing and the characters and all my stunts that we do week to week. How many people we kill? Do you know what I mean? And the visual language is like, I'm not scared to say, like, I think it could be put up on a 50-foot screen. I mean, I color it on a 35-foot screen at Tech. So you know what I mean? So I see the color space. I choose certain lenses. I shoot majority primes. I augment my lenses. I have different LUTs that twist color, but it's like, this space is so creative, and it's such a longer form. It's the real, it's like the new long form. Like, a feature is like a short form now.
It is.
And dramatic TV is like long, like Handmaid's Tale. Like, you kidding me? It's intriguing, fun stuff. It's like, that's long form.
Yeah, you're now working on you're working on a 10-hour movie now. That's how I look at it. And my approach is exactly the same. People go, how do you approach it differently? I don't. It's the same. I shoot it exactly the same as I would a movie. There's no difference for me. And I think putting that in your head, like, I'm doing whatever version of visual art you want to call it, like movie, TV, whatever, streaming. It's all the same to me. And in fact, on this show, Swagger, Reggie Bythewood, the creator, wouldn't even allow us to say episode. He will correct you every time. It's a maze. The show is built on mazes, and there's 10 mazes, and it's 10 continuous hours of a maze. It's not an episode. It's not television. It's not a movie. It's this long form. It's a new, back in the day when Friends, which, it was a great TV show, but Friends was like this half-hour situational thing each week. Nothing, the fact that they lived together was the only thing that tied them together. This is like a start, a middle, an end, and it's 10 hours. What is the difference in that and a movie? To me, I think it's the same. And the stories are more interesting.
And to your point, this is what I do. I go to the writer's room and I sit and I look at the board. Like, every writer's room has a board up, and they talk about the arc of the season. And with that arc of the season, I try to put my visual arc that parallels the arc of the season. And so I may even switch lenses at a certain point in the story, because I think there's an emotional different context of what's going on. So like, even my new show that I'm doing, we have 2 sets of lenses, and I'm going to probably be doing anamorphic and large format spherical, because I want a different emotional context depending on the storyline that we're going after. That's arcing a certain way. But in the beginning, there needs to be a different visual impact between a couple of the major storylines. Same thing you do on a feature. I'm in like 2 countries shooting a TV show. And, it's like, you're kidding me? That's just TV. It's like, come on, how many features get to really do that? It's fun space.
It is,
So just before we go to Eric, we don't often talk about technical stuff at the Film Roundtable. We kind of save that for other podcasts and conversations. But I'm sure there'll be somebody wanting to pick you up, Tommy, on using spherical, large format spherical and anamorphic in the same space. Can you elaborate on that a little bit and how they would cut together? Are you kind of like punching in or using part of the frame, or are you literally jumping from widescreen to
we'll keep it all the same aspect ratio, 2:4. So, and the large format spherical will extract. But the thing is, if you notice on anamorphic, you really kind of flatten people out. It compresses people a certain way, like faces. And there's a lot of close focus in the language. And even with close focus, anamorphic is kind of a flat, close focus, versus a spherical situation. The roundness of somebody's face it's just emotional. It's a different response, but you can see it. You know what I mean? 2 foot on anamorphic, same kind of focal length. 2 foot on large format spherical is it's totally different emotionally. And then there's also characteristics to the glass. that we're using, you know, is different color temperatures also. So between the color temperature, the flare, the compression, I'm trying to evoke that this storyline has a certain, like, you know, flatness to it, colder in terms of tone, versus our lead characters who are in a different emotional state than the people, the protagonists who are coming after them.
I love that. Yeah, thanks for explaining that. I mean, one of the things I noticed when I first started, I'm also a DP, for anyone that doesn't know, but I work in the commercial space for the most part. And when I first started using large format cameras, one of the things straight away, you know, you could, without actually getting to the technical aspects of it, you know, you could be on a much wider lens and be closer and still have a nice depth of field fall off, and that 3D element of it was just, you almost, it's a subconscious thing that anyone looking at it will go, what's different about this? I feel so much closer, much more into the action, and I think it's been amazing to shoot on that on large format cameras, and how that's really helped kind of change the visual storytelling. Another tool in our box. It's very exciting. I think everywhere, you know, all the podcast, not the podcast, sorry, all the Instagram profiles I'll follow, you know, you see a lot of people shooting mostly on large format cameras nowadays, probably for that reason. But it's cool to have another tool in the box, and the way you're using it to help differentiate the story is great. And, you know, I'm sure people will get a lot of value out of hearing about that. Eric, let's just go over to you for a second, because I know, as you've touched upon, we've known each other for a long time, and I'm especially excited to see your journey, you know, from those crew days where, you know, you crewed for me, and I sat through your films, which had a glint of the future in them, you know. You know, it's interesting because, you know, you said like about how you know, Woody Allen would like act and direct in his movies. I remember you what was the key grip's name that you used to hang out with at the time?
Who, Brandon Taylor?
Brandon.
Yeah.
That's a good key grip, and a great guy. And you guys would make films together. You guys would go off and do everything. You would write it and direct it, produce it, and act in it and shoot it. And I mean, if anyone worked hard at trying to make their film career happen, you guys were definitely it. But you know, we spoke last year, the beginning of the pandemic. You know, not long after the success of the 40-year-old version, and I remember, you know, you had, like, we all have moments of, you know, what's coming next, and, you know, what does it lead to. I think I want to come back and touch on that in a second. But for right now, I'm interested to know, or rather, I think our audience would be interested to know how you go from a career of indie movies to a TV show, and then what the difference in your experience, because this is your first TV show, right? So I think that's really interesting. Clearly, Tommy and Rodney are, you know, well, they're newbies at shooting TV too, but are slightly more experienced than you guys are. But you know, they've been doing it for years. So yeah, keen. I think we're all keen to hear your perspective on TV and how it happened, and what your experience was.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think I think I'm lucky in some ways, in that, like, it kind of took me so long to kind of get anything I've shot, you know, seen by a large group of people, that I think now I feel ready for the opportunities that come my way, and I feel comfortable on a set in a way that I probably wouldn't have, you know, had I gotten these opportunities earlier. You know, I think I think last we spoke, I was kind of down on myself because the network had not approved me for a show that I really wanted to do. But I guess about a year ago. I think we maybe spoke like that week or right after, and I was like, oh, I don't know. But
We've all been there.
Brutal.
Yeah. But it was, you know, I wanted to do this HBO Max kind of miniseries thing with the director I'd worked with before, and they just wouldn't approve me. And so I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going back to indie world. And then, I spent, then the pandemic hit, everything turned upside down. I really, paid the bills doing at-home commercials, shooting with my family. I ran into Tommy on one, on a screen that looked like this. But then I got this, I was interviewing for things as things started coming back. And one of the things I interviewed for was this new show on HBO Max that was ostensibly a sketch show, but it was it was written by Michael Che, and it was being directed by a gentleman, Oz Rodriguez, who did kind of previously his most well-known thing was he did all the digital shorts for SNL. And so he had kind of tons and tons of experience working in this kind of short form sketch thing. And he was really trying to break out of that visually into something else. And he saw a film I shot called Clemency. And I think that's what probably got me the interview. So interestingly enough, I got this TV show, which doesn't, it's a comedy, through probably one of the darkest, most dramatic things I've ever shot. For anybody that doesn't know, Clemency is a very, very kind of somber tale about a prison warden and her life between two scheduled executions at her prison. So it's certainly kind of down, depressed. There's definitely a bring tissues type movie. But this Oz saw it, and I think really, really appreciated the visual language and kind of the steadiness and the long takes. And I think it was so different from what people were doing in the comedy TV space that I think he, I think he really took a chance and was like, I think if we melded this with kind of what I've been doing, we could make something different. So, I really have to thank him for kind of bringing me through. And funny enough, then the same network approved me, 6 months later. So I didn't shoot anything else between the
yeah. Who knows, man? That's the other thing. Who knows how all this happens? It's you can't, you'll destroy yourself trying to figure it out. You got to just let it go and, just keep working hard. That's it.
Just going back to something that you said, Rodney, and then just throwing it in with Eric, Eric's experience. Rodney, you said you don't approach TV any differently than you do a movie. I've worked a little bit in the TV space where I've shot some tandem days and second unit on some shows. And for me, from coming from commercials, the pacing is incredibly different. Much faster, and a lot more people are looking at you to try and work things out in a different way. Where you go into a commercial and you've got, you've thought about it, you've got time to plan it through. Obviously, if you're the lead DP on a TV show, then of course you planned it. But when you're coming in, like I was, and you've only got a few days to kind of read the script and figure it out and come onto sets that you might not even had a chance to see before, then you got to move fast, and you got to. I remember one scene. It was on the Sinner, and it was in a hotel room, and two characters were talking to each other, and there was a lot of crosses of eye line. People were moving back and forth, and it was a real complicated thing to try and figure out how to kind of cover it, without crossing the line, and So I'm sitting there trying to work it all out, and people go, "So what are we doing?" Everyone, as soon as the rehearsal's over, everyone looks at you. What are we doing? So I wasn't used to that, basically, and I learned it. But at the same time, I'm keen to hear, Eric. Whether I believe you shot for HBO, right? So maybe you might. I think you might have more time on HBO. My experience with working on HBO, but I'd be interested to hear from all of you if that's the case. But Eric, how did you transition from indies to TV in your first experience?
I mean, I have the opposite experience. I mean, it was way slower than any feature that I've made.
Exactly. That's the thing.
Features were. I mean, that was. I think one of the things. I think there's always these questions of. I think as a DP, you have to prove yourself you know, you have to prove yourself to kind of like, it's like, you know, a rippling pond where like you prove yourself to these people and those people tell these people, and, you know, I mean, kind of like, you know, it grows and grows, and you know, so, but a big conversation was, can I shoot quickly? Can I do these things? You know, can I shoot a show that's going to look good, you know, and make our days? But like coming at a indie, it's like, I mean, we shot Clemency in 17 days, you know, and I think probably 2 or 3 of those days ended up on the cutting floor. So it's like, we shot it in what, 14, 15 days? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, so, and we're doing, you know, a 9-page day, a 10-page day is just like not even discussed. It's just what you do. The producers are like, well, we'll make that a 2-camera day. You know, get at it. So, you know, so I mean, TV, I mean, there were certain times where we were moving very, very quickly, but I mean, certainly not any faster than I had already worked before.
And you have a bigger crew, right? I mean, that's the thing. You've got this bigger crew that can help you achieve that schedule. Like, because I agree with Eric. To me, the schedule is the same. They're like, you know, this is what, you know, the schedule is exactly the same, but now I've got an army of people to help me make the show. And, you know, and hopefully you've got an experienced director, whereas on a movie, you probably work with a first-time director. So it, I don't know, for me, the speed is not that difficult.
That's the same for you, Tommy, your experience?
Yeah, I would say, you know, I just keep it, you know, I keep the same speed. And there was something I learned from freaking Maddie, like all gas, no brakes. Like, if you ever watch Maddie
Yes.
fucking move, and it's just like, you don't sit down. And if you only have one speed, then you don't know anything else. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like you know, my thing is like always have a couple of suggestions ready as you watch it out, and you just like, I'm a sports guy, so it's like you got to have 2 or 3 options when the defense comes out. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I know what the play was called, but it's like I got to be able to understand every option route that each one of these guys are going to run, because that's just what it is. Otherwise, they're going to be like, does this guy know what he's doing? Oh, fuck, no. You know what I mean? It becomes one of those things like, we're not going to make it. Here comes the showrunner. Like, oh, my God. They're going to shut us down. Like, I'm not going to be able to hold on to this extra money for my boat. You know what I mean? It's like, where's that extra money go that, you know, we done saved you? You know what I mean? Some producers are, I work with a couple that have been like, toss my guys extra money at the end of a show, because we've saved them money.
Yeah.
And there's, of course, other producers.
Text me their numbers after you. When we get off this call. I just want to have a quick chat with them.
Yeah, my crew can attest to it. They got straight up bumps.
Wow.
And
Wow.
Other
Amazing.
where it's kind of like, so with all that extra time, did we end up getting, like, why are you still at us a certain way? But you gotta have one speed, man. Whatever you do, try to be consistent about it, and just have more ideas than the director may know that what's possible. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
As you watch the blocking.
Yes.
You know.
And also, it's like you got to steer the blocking a little bit to the schedule sometimes. You know, like, you know, we can do that, but it's actually an extra hour to do it that way, because we got to pick up 3 more shots. But if we just block it this way, we don't need those 3 extra shots, and the scene is going to play the same, you know. So let's do that. And the directors want to hear that, because they want, you know, more takes and more options. So you just have to be quick on your feet. I don't know if I have the patience to spend a lot of time between setups. I like to keep it moving and keep it rolling. I think the actors can perform better if they're not waiting around all day long to do a scene. You know, I have a funny story about working on Star. My Steadicam operator needed a day to go to a wedding or something, and he said, if I can find somebody to come in that you like, can I leave for the day? And it just so happened that Jeff Haley was in town prepping, and Jeff is an amazing Steadicam operator. He did all the David O. Russell films, and he does the big Marvel films and everything. So he was prepping, and he said, sure, I'll come in. So he comes in for the day, and about lunchtime, he comes over to me, he goes, do you work like this every day? Because he's, before lunch, they've done like 4 shots. And we've done like 20 before lunch. And he's like, do you do this every day? I'm like, yep. Like, wow, dude. He barely took the rig off all day,
That's funny. So let's just change tack for a little bit. I'd like to kind of talk about perhaps being away from we all love what we do, and we're fortunate to make a living doing what we're doing. And for me, in the commercial space, the last 20 odd years I've been doing this, and I've managed to make a good enough living to be around a lot. But being in TV, I'm imagining you're gone for months at a time. And something that speaking to Rodney last night, and you touched on it, Tommy, and you were starting to talk about it at the beginning. So now's your chance to bring it up again. How you and Rodney bumped into each other in Home Depot, and Rodney said that Tommy, you're the kind of guy that he would love to have more of a friendship with. But the fact is that you guys are both traveling so much that you're never around. And so it's so much so that you bump into each other at Home Depot, and I'll let you guys share the story.
Yes, go ahead, Tommy.
That was hilarious, because Rodney is literally in the place. We were talking in like September of 2019.
Yeah.
And you were like getting ready to go to Virginia.
Richmond. Yeah.
And then he ended up getting stuff, but we had seen each other. I actually came and visited you because you were outside of my house one day.
That's right.
Shooting at my old house over at the stadium. And Rodney was gracious enough to let me come by. I wanted to check out the stadium because I used to see it from outside my window. And then from there, we ran into each other, and it's just like the crossing of paths, because I usually am out of town. Like every other year, it seems like I'll leave town or something.
Yeah.
And so I've been home this past year because of COVID and snowfall.
Right.
And I had just gotten started to Chicago, came home, been a year of snowfall. Now I'm going back out. So I try to build a pattern so then I have a little bit of time home and away, and try to balance and bring the family out. But it is tough. I mean, you talk to a lot of people, social media, you try to run into people when you're in the same city. You try to find out who's there shooting as well, and try to meet up and try to have this camaraderie. But it's like, it's kind of par for the course. Like, it's the film business is not, it's not all about California anymore. I mean,
definitely not. Yeah.
And it's not all about New York City either.
Yeah.
I'm doubling like New Mexico in like Spain. I'm like, why? I'm like, okay. Sure, like, because everybody has a tax break.
Right.
So the producers in the studios are chasing where they can get the bang for the buck at a price point and finish their show.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we're kind of at the mercy of that. But I mean, it's definitely tough, man. It's you miss certain birthdays, you miss certain events. Now with COVID, it's kind of like even worse, because I have to leave, but then it's like, even if my family comes, there's a 5-day off the top, depending on the country, 5-day off the top or 10-day off the top, that they can't even like see me, stay with me because of what's the regulation, and I can't come up positive. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's difficult, man, but I signed up for it. I mean, I didn't get a desk job.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, we ended up talking for an hour that day in the Home Depot just because we hadn't seen each other, and it's we just stand there in the aisles. I think they started getting concerned about why we were there so long. These dudes scoping this place out, or what's going on?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and no one's prepared for this, man. Like you're pursuing it when you're young. You don't have a family. You want to do it. You're passionate about it, and then as you get older, you start to have a family, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, I don't see them that much. It's really hard, and you can't prepare anyone for that. I've only done one job in LA in 6 years, and that's the one that Tommy came and visited me on. And that actually show was Ballers, which started in Florida, but they moved it to LA. I got to do the last season in LA. And but yeah, one job in 6 years, man. You start going, wow, I'm just on the road. I mean, you know, and these jobs are 5 or 6 months at a time. My kids are now older. You know, they're 18 and 21 now, which I can't believe. So they're probably just fine with dad not being too close by. But I miss them a lot, you know, and it's hard to be gone so much. And yeah, with COVID, I'm not jumping on an airplane to go see them for a quick weekend or anything. It's too hard. It's too difficult to do it that way. And I felt so much responsibility for the show to not be positive. And you know, so you're definitely not seeing them as much as you'd like. That's for sure. You know, and when they're younger, it's really hard. So
that's the time that when they're younger, that's the time.
Well, the thing is, I have a 9-year-old who's going to be 10 when I leave. She'll have her 10th birthday. So like next week, we're going to have her birthday party with, you know, my wife and I and my mother-in-law, and do a cake and give her some presents next weekend, because her birthday is like next month, just so I'm here to have like cake and ice cream with her. You know what I mean? So it's like,
yeah. I did the same thing. I did the same thing on this show. Yeah, my daughter's birthday was I mean, it was a tough one. This show was supposed to wrap mid-December. My daughter's birthday is January 5th. We were supposed to wrap mid-December. We didn't end up wrapping until February 5th or so. Combination. We had a couple of COVID shutdowns. We had snow shut us down a couple of times. You know, so it was like, yeah, I came back for the holiday break for 2 weeks. You know, and it was like Christmas, New Year's, and then we had a quick birthday celebration too, because I was gonna miss it.
how old is your
and
daughter?
how old is your daughter?
She just turned 8.
Wow, yeah, those are tough years, man. It's hard.
I just turned out a commercial because my daughter was like, I don't want you leaving again.
Yeah, right.
So I was like, all right.
Yeah. Well, you did the right thing. It's important. You know, you're not going to get those time back. And, you know, I went through a divorce, which we don't need to go through, you know, all that business. But, you know, and the kids were mostly with me, and I stayed in town for, you know, a good 4 or 5 years there trying to make that work. And then I got just called to do Ballers for season 2. And I was like, I have to go do that. That's just, you know, that's just too big of a career move to not go do it. And I had to leave for 5 months, and that was tough at that time because they had been mostly with me. But so that's, you know, you have to hire someone to look after them and stuff, you know.
Yeah, I guess when the kids are young, they can travel with you to a certain extent. I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, but my jobs are too short, you know, to consider. When my eldest was a baby, a couple of times my wife and him flew out. But you know, do you get to bring, you know, Tommy, do you ever get to bring the family with you?
Yeah, they usually come out. I mean, before COVID, we would set like a few different dates of, like, you know, when I did Empire, they came out like 4 times, 3 or 4 times. And then when I was in Atlanta, they came out like 3 or 4 times. Like, you know, that's cool. The international trip, if there wasn't COVID, I think it'd be easier. I'd probably just be like, why don't we all just kind of go? Because like it was majority remote learning anyways. I mean, they're starting to go back now next week, but you could still opt to do remote learning. In which case it would have been easier, no COVID, to be like, all right, let's just figure it out. We'll figure out a schedule with the school, because she's at a private school, and have the lessons recorded or something a certain way, and, you know, and would have figured it out much easier. But, you know, the COVID variable and the timing is just like, they'll probably come out towards the end. I think it's better than for them to try to come in the middle. So if they come out at the end, then I'm going to put them up, quarantine, and then we get to chill out when I'm not working, which is best.
That's
you know
cool.
what I mean? I mean, a word of advice I would give to any young DP is something we talked about that ties into this, is like, you know, we all talk about the fact that we have kids, we have wives, ex-wives, girlfriends, whatever. But it's like, if you really want to make that jump, you know, you need to make it on your own. Like, and I say, try to make the transition point. Like, if you are an electric and you're starting to get your opportunities to like shoot, it's like, if you have a partner, make a clear decision not to bring another human being into the situation until maybe you have a little bit more footing because it's going to be tough. I know gaffers who I won't name on this that started to shoot and now they can never shoot because the financial implications are way too steep to make a transition where you got to have a lull period in order to make a transitional jump.
Yeah.
You got to really think it out and have a discussion either by yourself or with your partner. Like, okay, somebody's going to need to pick up the weight while I do this. I mean, Ang Lee has a great story where he was like the provider for his kids and his wife is the doctor, and Ang like raised the kids the first 4 years while he wrote scripts at home. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like they must have had a discussion of some sort. I mean, now, he's an Oscar-winning director, but all those years, you gotta really plan it out or plan it by yourself, I think. And no, don't put yourself in a situation that you're not gonna be able to make that jump. Because then when you stop answering the call as a gaffer, you don't, if you only have yourself to answer to that the electricity bill is not being paid, it's a much easier conversation than to explain it to your partner.
Yeah, that's for sure. And that's what I tell, we've all worked our way up, and, people do ask, how do you do it? Well, you've got to have a way to make a living, because those first jobs you're shooting, they're not going to pay much. I mean, the first movie I shot, I didn't even get paid at all. Shot the whole movie for free. And you've got to have some way to make a living, and you shouldn't get caught up in, I've got to go be an assistant after I shot a movie, because there's a huge lull there. Like you do a movie and then it takes months before they even complete it, and then it goes into theater and you're then you're sitting by the phone going, oh man, it's in the movie theater, now I'm going to get a job. It's not how it works. That phone is not ringing. Somebody didn't come out of the movie theater and go, I gotta have this guy. And they're like, no, you still have probably another year before you get a job. You'll be waiting a long time by that phone if you're waiting for that one.
Funny, it's part that's sitting around waiting. It's definitely a part of the business, for a lot of people.
Well, it's interesting. COVID kind of changed that, at least for me. Like, this was the first time probably in my whole career where I knew I couldn't get a job. Like, and so it kind of relaxed me a little bit to really, really enjoy chilling out. I had a guitar for years. I could barely play it. I just, I took lessons every day, online, and I learned to play guitar. And it was kind of a unique moment in time if you could survive it financially. It helped that I had a job that I was on, and then I knew it was coming back eventually. But I think my next approach is just going to be more enjoy the time off a little bit more, and not be so caught up in when am I going to work again. It really showed you that, I think, this whole downtime we had.
I wish that was my case, man. Oh my God. We were in the middle during COVID. My wife and I had started the process last year of buying a house in like January.
Wow.
And I thought these people would like give a break in terms of like the global pandemic of it all. They were like,
right.
No, you need to show you made X amount while you're in this close. I was like, what?
Right. Yeah.
So, a few of us actually with the same agent. I'm like, I have to figure out how to work. So these things where I was doing, like, I had I had to like figure it out, because I was like, these lenders were like, no, you gotta, and I was like under pressure the whole time because I had to keep showing a number, and I was it was one of the most stressful parts of my life, because I was like, it's a global pandemic. Are you not going to give me a break?
I know, I can understand that, man. I was very fortunate. I actually, in that time off, I was looking for a house, and then my realtor said, you might want to call and see if you can get pre-qualified. And I called the dude. It was a 5-minute conversation. I can't do anything for you. Click. So I had to wait. So I waited. So I'm in the process now of getting something, but it's but you still have to show all that stuff. And they're like, what about this 6 months? You're like, did you see the news?
Right. That's exactly what my conversation started to be. And I was like, I can't believe I'm having this conversation with you. And they're like, well, this
Right.
is what the policy is. You know, it's
Yeah.
funny, it kind of ties into this discussion I had with Robert Richardson one time. And I
Yeah.
asked him, like, what did you do, Bob, like in early career? Bob said when he did his indie movies, he would make them, he would figure out to the dollar how much he needed to freaking live. Like, my rent is $100 and like, you know, $300 a month, plus this is how much it is for food. So as long as he covered like that nut for the
Right.
X amount of time to the dollar when it was just him, you know, not married, he said that's how he would plan out doing indie movies for years before, you know, he got his Oliver Stone break. You know what I
Right.
mean? But he was like literally down to like the dollar, like you said, it's the film business. This is still, you got to make a living, but maybe that's the way you do it. What is your bare minimum that you can live off of? And then if you don't have an agent, then you tell them this is what I need, so then I can return and not have my stuff put on the street. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's the business side of this is the hardest lesson I've had to learn, and it's taken years to really learn the
Yeah,
business,
for sure. Yeah.
the film business of it all. You know?
Yeah, I had to make a really hard decision last year on, or maybe it was 2019. Yeah, 2019, I guess now, where, you know, I had done this film. It's my favorite film called That Evening Sun with the director, Scott Teems. You know, and for years he'd been trying to get that second film made. And he finally, I'd been reading scripts of his. They're all great, but he couldn't get the money. And then finally he calls me like, I got the money. I'm going to do this film. You know, well, I think I got the money. You know, it's one of those like, I think it's going to work out. And it, you know, it was an amazing script and I wanted to shoot it so badly. And then Ballers calls and like, okay, we're doing Ballers season 5. We want you to do it. And it's the same time. And you're like, oh my God, now what do? I really want to shoot this movie. And, you know, I'm talking to Dan, our agent there, and, you know, I'm like, man, it seems that there's a pretty big difference here, right? Like what they're offering and what Ballers pays. And I said, I don't know if I need to get a calculator out or anything, but you know, he said, you should definitely get a calculator out, you know? And he's like, you should get a calculator out. You should see how much it costs you to live. And you should see if that film, The Quarry, is going to pay you that kind of money. And man, and yeah, it was heartbreaking. I wanted to do it so bad. And, but you've got to juggle that. And I like Ballers too. Like, it's a great experience to shoot that show. So, you know, I called a couple other DPs, Jim Deneau for one. He's like, dude, take Ballers. I couldn't even get him to discuss it. He's just like, take Ballers. And it's HBO, which I think is amazing to work with. I mean, I've done several projects with them. They're fantastic. And you have so much creative freedom there. There's no one ever calling me going, oh, it's too dark or it's too this or that. They just let you go, you know, and you're just doing your thing. And so anyway, I, you know, probably made in a week and a half on Ballers during prep. I didn't even have to do anything, what I would have made on that entire movie, you know, like it's just, so anyway, those are hard decisions, but you have to really make them. And, you know, and you have to, I think as a young DP, you definitely have to keep your overhead as low as possible. So you have the flexibility to take these films, because no one is going to pay you much to do them. And you've got to be able to do them so you can grow and make artistic films while you can, you know. And I'd be interested to hear Eric's story, because my story is so much, you know, I don't know if I want to use the word older, but like, it's just so different. When I came up, you had to work your way up. Like, there was no other way to do it. And, you know, and I have young DPs asking me sometimes about, you know, for this roadmap, and you're like, oh man, it's been so long. I mean, you know, we should try to find a young DP to talk to who's done it, because they're so different. So what is your experience, Eric, in terms of this?
I don't know that I qualify as a young DP anymore, but
well, I mean, compared, I look like I'm 100 on this video here.
Yeah, he has the shadow. I got like the little beard. You got
exactly. We're all in different stages of. We're all different Pokemon.
Yeah. Well, you're not the young DP I'm referring to in terms of trying to figure out the roadmap, but you're. Let's face it, dude. I mean, I'd like to be your age, but I feel good,
yeah.
though. I feel good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I didn't, I think my roadmap is different, just because. So, I mean, I really did kind of just hustle and work my way up,
Yeah.
I think I lost a lot of jobs to people who didn't need the jobs. I was just talking about this with a friend, the other day, where it was like, I think you hate to think of other DPs as competition, but at a certain point, I was trying to get jobs that I needed to keep the lights on, and there were a lot of young DPs whose parents had just bought them a camera package that would just swoop in, and I wouldn't get the job. So that was kind of my biggest, I think hindrance to working steadily and consistently, is that I actually needed the work. I mean, it did for, my overhead was low. It's not whatever, but I did have to keep the lights on. Yeah, I mean, my path was literally just meeting people on the ground floor on set and building something with them over years and years and years.
Yeah.
Kind of going back to TV, I think the biggest difference is that working on this show, there is kind of this camaraderie and when I was doing indie feature, when I do an indie feature, it definitely feels like every indie feature is a lotto ticket. And the idea is that it's going to get somebody, a shot if you do this movie well.
You hit twice, man.
Yeah.
I ain't hit once. I'm like, shit.
No.
Yeah. But it's like, I think it's a different feeling, not that it's bad, but it's just, I think there's less writing, on it. Like Clemency, for example, we I got a new draft of that script every couple months for 5 years. Before we finally got that movie made. So that feeling of, and it's, for me, it's all about doing good work with kind of young directors who are on the come up, and hoping your careers can run parallel.
Right.
There are still a couple directors that I've done, that I would hop in the trenches with in a heartbeat to do a tiny movie, because we have a relationship, and we've been talking about their features, what they're doing, what they're writing. I'm reading new drafts, all the time. So it's definitely, I think my biggest, kind of whatever I can impart to people is just, create strong relationships with young directors, with good directors who, have the same kind of fire in their belly that you do to make it. And do good work together.
Yeah, I kept waiting for the first-time directors to become second-time directors, and it just didn't quite work out, because they're so much more willing to give money to a first-time director, because you don't know what's going to happen. Maybe they'll hit it. But a second-time director, they just immediately go over their IMDb Pro. What's the box office? 100,000? No, I don't think so. And so it's hard, to get that second film. And the second film for directors is what really makes them. If you look at the history of directors, and people, point to these films and go, "Oh, that was their first movie." No, they did one before. You just never heard about it. And Memento was the second film for him. It wasn't the first. And it, throughout, the history of film, it's usually the second one that hits. And if you're not there with that director on that second one, you're not going to really go anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I just had that discussion with somebody about, like, even Michel Gondry. His first movie wasn't Eternal Sunshine.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It was the second or third movie. I think it was the
Yeah.
second. But I mean, that's where, like, when you talk to directors, like this new generation, one person you got to give credit to is Ava DuVernay, where she had a plan about her movie. It wasn't just about finishing the movie. It's about what's the plan to let everybody know about this movie.
That's right.
It don't matter how, to your point earlier, Rodney,
Yeah.
If people don't know about it, who gives a damn? You know what I mean? But
That's right.
everybody knew about Ava's movie because Ava had
That's
a
right.
plan about her
Yep.
movie after it was done. No matter if we spent 30 grand on it or whatever, or even if we spent $2 million on it, if you don't have a plan for your movie to let everybody know about it, it's like that's the director you want to be with. You want to find out what is their plan to make sure everybody knows about their movie, you know?
You're absolutely right. Yeah, the movie, you know, that Evening Sun being an example. I mean, it won South by Southwest and 13 other film festivals, but there was no money for promotion, none. I mean, they were doing newspaper ads. You're like, really? Like nobody looks at those anymore. You're not going to get people in a theater with a newspaper ad, but that's all they could afford. Yeah, so you have to get people out there to yeah, it's hard. That's the hardest part.
Yeah, and it should be a discussion to figure out, you know, like I said, it's the business, man. It's the film business. It ain't the friend business. It's the film business. It's a way to be creatively savvy, like Ava has done, like Spike Lee did.
Yes.
And figure out how to get the word out about your movie. You know what I'm saying?
I remember the trailer. I think it might have been She's Gotta Have It. The trailer was Spike selling socks.
So good.
On Flatbush. And he's like, come see my movie, because if you don't, I'm really gonna be here selling these socks.
yeah, exactly.
That was genius.
He's just genius at getting people into the theater, for sure. And he makes good films. So. But if he didn't know how to get people in the theater, it wouldn't have mattered.
Right. It would not have mattered.
Yeah. And he's just such a great story in terms of his progression. Each one, he got more and more people to see him, and you know, what an incredible career. You
know, I'm just thinking about the time, guys. I don't want to keep you guys for too long. There's a bunch more questions I would love to ask you. One thing I do want to ask, really, that one of you touched upon about, you know, Rodney, you said, you know, working with HBO, and now Eric, you work with HBO. Tommy, I'm not sure if you have, but you know,
they just shut me down like 2 months ago.
No,
they shut you down.
They shot me down. That's so good. Shot me down. Yeah, I had a 3-month interview for something, and all of a sudden, but then, you know, there was another job.
I said you and Eric can commiserate that. That means, according to Eric,
that means you'll get the next one.
Yeah, in 9 months' time they'll be back.
Hey, if I can bat 100, if I can bat 500 with HBO, I'll be all right.
Exactly. But I definitely haven't gotten all of them. I mean, I went into they called me in for a meeting, HBO, for a pilot, man, and it was a great script, and I was really excited. And I go in, and I hadn't really gone to the director wasn't even there. You know, it was with the executives, and I had never done that before myself. And I go in there, and everything's great. I know a bunch of them, and we've been on sets together. It's all friendly, great. And then all of a sudden, they're like, "Okay, so tell us." And I'm just like, "Oh, they want to pitch." Like I'm not a pitch guy. What? Like, I'm used to talking with a director about collaboration and what we're going to do and visual, and here's an idea. And this was a full on it was like I was a writer. I was like, I did not get that job. That didn't go well, man. I was trying, flailing. It was bad. I know how to do it now, but I definitely lost that one.
Well, what I wanted to ask about the like having creative freedom. With a movie, you get to put your own look. You and the director get to decide the look and how you want to tell the story. With TV, are you up against execs, the showrunner who said, comes to you and says, "That's not how I want it to look. Yeah, I want your look. I want you to bring your look to the show." But ultimately, like there's certain shows, that I've kind of dipped in and out of, that have a playbook, and as a DP, a DP friend said to me one time, they've got an incredible artist, painting by numbers essentially, because you're not using the talents of what you can do as a cinematographer, what you can bring to the table. You know, you just have to do it. You have to do your wide. You know, let's talk about coverage. You have to do your wide, your medium, your close up. You know, from every different angle. Don't get creative with the camera work, or don't get creative with the lighting. It's just gotta have the look that we've set as a show, and that's how we want it to look. Is that your experiences, all of you, or you know, does it change from show to show, or can you yeah?
I'm going to tell a quick story relating to what Rodney just said about a pitch. I just had an interview for a show that like I'm not going to call anybody out, but it's a show that took place in a world that I know very well. You know, it's like a New York, it's very, very, very much my wheelhouse, and very much the kind of thing I've shot before in the feature world. It's with the showrunner, no directors, nobody else, and the showrunner was like, you know, it was not for the first season of the show, and the showrunner was like, you know, if you were the DP of this show, what do you think you would bring to the table? What do you think you would change? And I was like, well, you know, if you want to be fully honest, I think I would change this. This could use a little improvement. You know, I talked about skin tones on some of the darker skinned actors, needing some work, you know, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, okay, all right, interesting. And I was like, what are you looking for a DP to change? And he stops and he goes, nothing.
Oh man!
And I said,
well,
all right, well,
see you later.
Talking to you, I guess.
Yeah.
That's that.
But you know what I have to say is, and you know, I don't know who it is or anything, and please, you don't need to say that, but like that, then that's probably not the best environment to be in, because you want someone, even if it's season 2, that says, how are we going to make this better? Even if it's your own work, when you go to season 2, how are we going to make this better? What are we going to do? Everybody needs to be on board with that. And you know, I've done quite a few season 2s for some reason, and season 3s, and you know, I always come in and try to make it better. And you know, nothing against the DP that shot it before. It's just the process. They would have done the same thing. Everybody wants to make everything better, and that's who you want to be working with. So in my case, I've just had a lot of creative freedom, I can say. I've never really faced someone saying you have to do this many shots or this many, you know, this kind of shot or anything. I've really had a lot of freedom. I can't complain at all about that. It's been a great experience for me.
Yeah, I mean, just depending on the network too. Certain networks have a certain type of like way of doing things. And
that's true.
Brand per se, you know, being on FX, they kind of let you like run. Sometimes I think I can go off of the reservation a little bit in terms of like things, but you know, I'm like, I tried. At least I tried. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, if you watch Snowfall, but I don't know. It's it just depends on the showrunner. I mean, I usually kind of dance with them a little bit, and then sometimes if I know what type of show it is, you know, like I did Empire, and the show is like it has a certain way of doing things. Right. And the showrunner and I get along great, Sana, and she would say, you know, this thing is like, you know, it's like a sheet of cookies. There's 12 cookies on the sheet. Each cookie gets like 3 chocolate chips. You can put the chocolate chips anywhere you want, but there can only be 12 cookies per sheet. And that's kind of like what it was. But you know what? It was an open, honest discussion. So for me not going in there with assumptions, I do nothing but love her for it. And the guy I was stepping in for, Jody, he said the same thing. But it's like, if I know that going into it, I can't be mad. I took the job. You know, Jody needs somebody to step in for him. I went and did the job and said, these are the parameters. I said, hey, okay, cool. I had nothing going on time. All right, cool. But at least I knew what going. It's not like Snowfall. I couldn't approach Empire like Snowfall.
Right. Yeah.
Design and all that. Like I can move it a little bit, but I understood. I had 12 cookies per sheet with 3 chocolates per cookie.
Yeah. That's interesting. And it's all about the storytelling with the camera and how you're going to approach it. And definitely the showrunners have a heck of a lot of input. I mean, it's their show, you know, and at the end of the day, you're working for them, and there's a bunch of different directors coming in, you know. I had a showrunner tell me he didn't care about the directors once. He just wanted me to do what he wanted, you know. So now I know that parameter, you know. But like on Crashing, you know, I'm doing a Judd Apatow show, and and they're like, okay, so on our show we shoot 2 cameras, cross coverage, every setup. Do you have a problem with that? Nope. You don't have a problem with that. They asked me like 12 times during the interview. That's all. It was like the most they wanted to know was, are you okay with that? Maybe they'd had somebody got grumpy about it. I don't know. And I just took it on as like, that's my challenge for this show. I'm going to learn how to cross cover every scene in this show, and I'm going to do it as best I can. And in fact, the 3rd camera was actually used for probably 50% of the 2 camera setups. We threw the 3rd camera at it at the, you know, looking at the 2 shots. So I had that camera and those cameras, and that's how we shot that show. And I enjoyed the process of trying to figure that out. You know, like it was cool. I had a good time on that.
That's awesome.
So, you know, it just depends on, you know, at the end of the day, man, I got in this to have fun, and I want to have fun. I want my crew to have fun. It's going to be a relaxed set. We're going to get through the work in a timely manner, and we're going to do the best we can with it, you know. But you know, there's not going to be anybody screaming on the set that I'm on. We're going to just have a good time and make the show.
Nobody's chest is open on an operating table. You know what I mean? Like,
Right, yeah, exactly.
waiting in the other room to find out if you took their life.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
exactly.
So I'm gonna throw one more question at you guys before we wrap up, if that's okay. And I'll start with and you know, feel free not to answer or deflect. I'm going to start with an experience of my own, just to kind of set the tone. It really is, what did you do? What have you done wrong in your career that you've learned from, and that you could share? That, you know, just one experience that you could share with young people who are afraid of screwing up or making a mistake, or like, oh, I'm never going to get hired again, or what, you know, or I'm never, you know, I'm not going to come back to this. I mean, and I'll just say, you know, one of many mistakes I've made, but I was on a commercial one time, and it was like, I think it was like the 4th round of a client with the same director, and I still work with this director, but we wanted, you know, everyone, you know, all the agency creatives are again, we want to get creative, we want to change things up a little bit. So I got the Vantage T1 lenses, and you know, I don't know if anyone's shot on those Vantage T1 lenses, but when you're shooting wide open at T1, there's some kind of diffusion, everything balloons out, and you're not getting that back, basically. So we're on the set, and we're lining up this shot, and I said to the guys, I was like, look, this is the look we can go for. And I said, this is what it looks like when it's wide open. It kind of has that kind of dreamy feel. And this is, you know, it kind of fits the story a little bit. But if you decide you don't want that, you know, it's like, you know, then play it safe, and we'll stop down half a stop, whatever. And so the director spoke to the agency creative director, and they were like, let's go for it. No, we're going to go for it. I said, okay, cool. We went for it. And we went for it, and I shot it. And about a week later, it was post, I got a phone call from the production company, Matthew, you need to give us a call right now. And so of course I called up. You know, I started panicking because I could hear the stress in their voice. I said, what's going on, guys? They said, so it's come down from somebody very high up, you know, at the client, that they're not happy about. There's a certain look on the footage, and they want to know what it is and how they can get rid of it. And I was like, certain look? What do you mean by certain look? I don't understand. Anyway, pretty much it came back that it was just kind of like diffuse. You know, they've been trying to, you know, sharpen it and add contrast and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, so, well, oh no, well, we discussed that on set. You know, we discussed it on set. I was like, I told everyone there's no coming back from that. And they're like, no, you've done something, you've got to fix it. And so I was like, okay, great. So of course I tried to kind of get in the, you know, with the colorist, and of course it, you know, we got somewhere part of the way of making it look like we hadn't shot it wide open. But anyway, the point is, the story, for about 2 years, I didn't work with that director again. And, you know, we're often the fall guy. We're the people, there's a DP, you're the one that people come to you looking for solutions for everything, for time, for creativity, for solutions, for money. How can we make this work? And when it doesn't go right, you're the one that falls. So, I mean, I learned, like to triple check things. And, now I don't take those risks, at least on the commercials anymore. I just play it safe, unless we really, like I have the top dog of the people. But, that's my approach. That's something that I learned the hard way. What did you, do you guys all have a story you can share? And then I think probably wrap it up for time. Or we can wrap it up for time now. You can all quietly pass.
I'll kick it off with a. I don't know if this is a long time ago. I was starting to get in. I shot a feature. I shot one feature for this kind of like lower budget horror kind of outfit in New York, and they knew that I was kind of more into the dramatic thing, and they kicked me over to a director who was doing like a very small kind of like short, or I think it was longer than a short, but it was and we sat down, no money, no budget, no like nothing. It was like me, a camera, and like 2 kinos. And I, we sat down and prep was like at a coffee shop for an afternoon prep. But, I was like, there's like, we don't have the ability to cheat anything on this. Like when we walk into a location, it has to be that location. Whatever we're doing here we have to be kind of capturing the real world with this movie. She was like, that makes sense. That's great. And we get into this kind of like bright white Brooklyn loft. And she hands me a script and says, "Oh, I made these scenes all night now." And I said, I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" She was like, "Yeah. Like these all worked better as night, so I rewrote them for that. But like we only had the loft rented for the day, so we just need to like, I know you can day for night and do this kind of stuff." And when I tell you, I really did my best. I was like, I have my color temp bumped to like 10,000 so that any blue light coming in still is like a little warm, and you'd spill, we had, trash bags taped up on the wall.
Oh my God.
And she, on set again, we're on the same kind of thing. We're on set, I'm like, look, like this is all we can do right now. And she's like, no, it's great. I appreciate it. Thanks. I know I threw you a curveball, and I'm like, okay.
Curveball.
And
that's a mean curveball.
And then we wrap, and she sends the footage to this production company. And is like, why did you recommend this guy? He doesn't know what he's doing. This is a night scene. God. Why does it look like this? This looks terrible.
Whoa.
And I had to go interview again for a feature that I already had with this company, where they pulled up all this footage, and they were like, "What'd you do?" So,
oh my God.
Yeah. So I mean, since then, I've definitely doubled down on my like, if we're gonna make the world something that it is not, we all need to be on that page from jump.
Yeah.
And you need to, I'll trust you, but you need to trust me if there's something that, I say we cannot make this look the way you want it to look. You have to, you know what I mean? There has to be mutual trust that way. But yeah, since then, don't cheat has been a big mantra of mine on smaller things.
Yeah, you definitely have to get everybody on the same page, and it's hard sometimes.
I guess I would say biggest lesson I've learned. Oh, God, this is so many of them.
I thought you were trying to find one.
Yeah, the one I would say is like, just arguing with the director because your idea is different. after a certain point, you just kind of have to be like, you got to pay me the same amount of money. They're like, yeah, all right, fucking put the camera on. You know what I mean? It's kind of like to hold up production after like,
Yeah,
you
right.
had a game planned and they throw you like to where to put the camera differently. Going from showing up with the pages day and night.
Yeah,
That's,
That's
just uncalled for. I'd be like,
yeah.
I would like, we need to get a producer on the phone. That's one thing I did learn over the years after getting thrown in front of the bus is like, I gather everybody up and I'm like, okay, so just so we all stand here and understand, let them know. And then make sure you talk to the producer and the producer kicks it down to everybody else. Cause we're not going to agree on it. And then all of a sudden the producer who answers to the studio or whoever the executives are is not privy to it. So since the producer's got to be the liaison to the money, then let's make sure that you say that to the money. Because I'm not going to be the one in front of the bus. I've already had that happen. But I'll gather the first AD, producer, or multiple producers, and I'm like, okay, so this is what's been talked about. What do you guys, you explain to them. Because I'm not going to be, run over.
Right.
Just for that reason, because it's happened to me before. But also, it's just not, after some point, it's just not worth arguing with the director where to put the camera lens, because they're going to pay you the same amount of money, and your show should not be hinging on one shot.
Right.
Otherwise, it's been a bad fucking movie the whole time. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I always tell the director that, I'm going to always tell you what I think. I will always tell you what I think. At the end of the day, it's your decision. So there's not a lot of the arguing because, here's what we should do. I think the camera goes here. I don't want it there. I want it over here. Okay, you're the director. I'll put it over here. But, and hopefully that's not happening very often and you're both collaborating really well and it's a great, thing. But I'm trying to think about I think I would say like, it's hard, but like if you kind of can't be afraid to make mistakes, you're going to make them. They're going to happen. And if you're not, you kind of have to accept that in a way so that you can be more brave and try to shoot something that is different or what you're trying to do. And you can't be afraid that it's going to be a mistake. I did a show where, the creator of the show said, I want something different than anything is on television. Okay, well, I haven't watched all the television, but so we created this look. He loved it. It was fantastic. And about in season 2 of 18 or 19 episodes into this thing, the senior producer director comes to me and goes, the head of the network saw the show and said the show looks dirty. I said, cool, that's what we're doing. No, she means dirty like she doesn't like it. What? We're on episode like what here? Okay. What are we doing? I don't know. That's the senior producer. I don't know. Okay. Well, should we do some tests or something? Show them what we're doing now? It's crazy.
So what happened?
But what happened?
Yeah.
We tried to make it look like the network, and eventually I got let go. And for me, it actually was good because I didn't want to shoot it normal. It wasn't the story, and I don't think, and I don't really have any regrets about it. Like, and I called, I had a great discussion with the creator about it. I think he ended up in a hard, between a rock and a hard place at the studio. And I said, hey man, this was awesome. Thank you for, I said, thank you. I said, I know I shot a beautiful show because you kept telling me how beautiful it was. And thank you for allowing me the creative freedom to do that show. It was great.
Yep.
Moving on.
Yeah. It's we all like you said, we all struggle with the concept of failure, and I think it's something that not just us as DPs, with the huge responsibilities we have, but all of us in life. And I think I'll finish up with this. I heard a really good audio book a few months ago during the lockdown. It was written by an English maths teacher for kids, and trying to help kids like improve themselves at maths. And there's like, she came up with this concept. There's a fixed mindset where you might come across something and you might say, I can't do that, and if you feel like you can't do it, then you kind of give up. But if you actually have an open mindset to something and you realize it's okay to fail, it's okay, and the very act of failing actually allows you to grow, and is actually a very important part of getting better at what you do. Then once you give into that, you realize you actually probably want to fail, because failing, that she said was like the first attempt in learning. You need to fail, and once you fail, you learn how to do it better, and then you grow. So I try to embrace that concept now moving forward. But guys, listen, I think we've taken up enough of your time. Thank you so much, all of you, for really sharing your experiences and coming on today. I know everyone's going to get a ton of value from hearing you guys all talk. Really appreciate it. Wish you all luck and with the future endeavors, and I hope you all stay safe. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us. This was great.
Good guys,
Appreciate
like Eric and Rodney, good people.
Yeah, really great.
For sure.
Next time we'll do this in Home Depot, guys. I don't know what you think, but
Exactly.
I was like,
Yeah.
cinematographers getting hardware and talking movies.
Yeah.
I would watch that show.
Yeah.
I would watch a show where DP just walked through Home Depot.
Yeah.
okay, there's the next reality show. Eric.
I'm taking over Seinfeld's Coffee and Cars. DPs and Home Depot.
Yeah.
Well,
Nice.
Thanks again, guys. I just want to say a quick thank you to the rest of the Film Roundtable team, Aaron Weil, Doug Torres, and Maria Prieto, who are constantly working hard to, with the rest of us, to kind of put together these roundtables. And a lot of people are getting value out of them. And once again, we really appreciate your time. So stay safe, and look forward to seeing you guys and talking again at some point in the future.
No, thank you so much. Appreciate it.